3 seconds. A laugh cut through the intake office like gunfire. 6 tours at your age? That's impossible. The clerk's smirk hung in the air until Aria Navarro dropped her orders on the desk. 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, 6 deployments before her 27th birthday. The room went silent. Whispers spread before she even left processing. Baby face. No way she's real. Must be admin error at Fort Granite, where reputations were currency. She walked in, owing no one and carrying ghosts no one could see. In the chow hall, eyes tracked her every move. One private muttered, "She looks like she should be in college." Not here. Aria slid her tray down. Calm? College doesn't issue medkits for arterial bleeds, she said evenly. Then returned to her food. The private swallowed hard. That night, Colonel Naomi Rourke and Dr. Alan Pierce reviewed her file in disbelief. Surgical notes scrawled in dirt. Casualties stabilized under mortar fire. Evac logs marked with her name again and again. She shouldn't even be standing, Pierce whispered. Rourke only frowned. Then tomorrow, we'll see if the legend holds. Alone on perimeter watch. Aria pulled a cracked phone from her pocket, a saved voicemail her squad leader. Weeks before Red Mesa swallowed him whole. Don't scare the rookies. Navarro, let him think you're ordinary. She pressed the phone to her chest, listening to the hum of generators and the laughter of soldiers who didn't yet know her story. Then she stared at her own hands in the dark. They looked steady, almost still until memory made them shake. Tomorrow, Fort Granite would throw every test at her, and when the smoke cleared, the base would learn why the field called her ghost hands, and her real story was only beginning. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Stories Unseen for Part 2. The desert at Ironveil Range didn't breathe. It seethed. Dust curled like smoke under the convoy's tires. Engines growling low as the Humvees crawled through a valley that locals called Red Mesa. Aria Navarro sat in the back, medkit strapped tighter than her armor. 6 deployments behind her, yet the air carried a weight she had felt too many times the silence before an ambush. The first explosion ripped the lead vehicle apart. Fire blossomed. Metal shrieked, and the valley walls spat rifle fire. Soldiers hit the dirt, shouting over each other, returning rounds blind into the cliffs. Corpsmen, a voice bellowed. Aria was already moving. A private lay screaming, leg mangled by shrapnel. Another slumped silent beside him, chest rising shallow, blood pumping in pulses too fast. She dropped to her knees, calm as the world split open around her. Tourniquet first, pressure dressing next. Her hands worked like they weren't attached to fear, fingers finding arteries in darkness broken by tracer fire. A round snapped past her air. She didn't flinch. "Stay with me," she barked at the silent one. Knuckles red as she forced air into collapsed lungs. Around her, bullets tore stone. Grenades shook the ground. Soldiers shouted for cover. Someone screamed again. Another casualty. She looked up. Too many. Too fast. She should have frozen. But something else took over, a rhythm older than panic. Clamp, cut, seal, breathe, move. Minutes bled like hours. 3 men who should have died were still alive when the rescue bird finally thundered overhead. Dust storms whipped through the valley as the Black Hawk descended, rotors screaming louder than the firefight. Aria dragged the last casualty across open ground, tracer rounds chasing her shadow. A ranger hauled her inside, staring at her hands slick with blood. "You're not human," he muttered, all cutting through exhaustion. Another soldier, pale but alive, whispered at first ghost hands. The nickname stuck before the bird even cleared the valley. Back at Fort Granite, when the reports came in, Officers scanned the casualty lists expecting to count the dead. Instead, 3 names were scratched into the survived column, all marked by one medic's initials, A.N. That night, Aria sat alone in the barracks, uniform stiff with dried blood, phone clutched in her fist. She replayed the voicemail again, her squad leader's voice, steady as stone. "Don't scare the rookies." Too late. The rookies weren't scared anymore. They were believers. Morning at Fort Granite carried a sharper edge than combat. Out in Hellmand, bullets didn't care if you looked too young. But here, every eye waited for Aria Navarro to stumble. They wanted proof that the combat medic with medals couldn't hack controlled training. The recruits lined up at the live fire course, sweat already darkening their uniforms. Colonel Naomi Rourke watched from the tower, arms folded. Beside her, Dr. Alan Pierce held Aria's thick personnel file like it might bite. "Today is live fire," the instructor barked. "No blanks, no excuses. Mistakes here still kill." The whistle blew. The mock village erupted in chaos, targets springing, rifles cracking. Aria moved with her squad. M4 braced tight, eyes steady. To them, she was just a medic. To her, this was Red Mesa all over again. A simulated casualty went down, standard drill. But then a real scream tore through the dust, Corporal Ethan Adams clutching his thigh, blood pouring from a ricocheted round. The exercise snapped into reality. "Cease," the instructor started. But Aria was already moving. She slid to Adams' side. Kit unzipped in one practiced motion, tourniquets a press left window. Her voice cut sharper than gunfire. Recruits froze, then obeyed. Cover fire erupted as Aria cinched the strap high and tight, blood slowing under her hands. She packed the wound, calm as if stitching under a burning tent in Hellmand. Adams gasped. "I'm hit bad. You're not dying today." She snapped back. "Breathe. Stay with me." From the tower, Rourke leaned forward. "That's not instinct," she muttered. Pierce's reply was quiet. "That's 6 deployments speaking." The squad pressed forward, shaken into focus by her steadiness, by the time the last target dropped. Silence blanketed the range. Adams, pale but stable, managed a weak grin. "Ghost hands. Guess I get it now." Aria only squeezed his shoulder. "We're not done until you walk off this field." When the whistle finally ended the drill, recruits lowered their rifles with trembling hands. Instructors exchanged looks, half disbelief, half respect. That night, Rourke sat in her office, staring at Aria's file again. Pages of citations and casualty tallies, numbers that told a story, but not the one she'd seen today. She didn't just save him. Rourke said. She commanded without rank. Dr. Pierce closed the folder. "Ghost hands isn't a nickname. It's doctrine in motion." Outside, under floodlights, Aria cleaned her weapon alone. Her hands were steady, but her eyes carried the weight of every name she hadn't saved. The range had given her one victory. Tomorrow would demand more. The summons came at dusk. A single line slipped under her door. "Report to Colonel Rourke. 1900 hours." Aria Navarro sat on her bunk, boots unlaced, med kit still half-packed from the day's range test. She'd faced ambushes, blood, firestorms, but nothing made her palms sweat like walking into a room where rank outweighed survival. The office smelled of coffee and dust. Colonel Naomi Rourke sat behind her desk, file open like a blade. Beside her, Dr. Alan Pierce tapped a pen against the folder, eyes cool and searching. "Navarro," Rourke began, voice sharp as gravel. "Do you know why you're here?" Aria stood at attention. "No, ma'am." Rourke slid the folder forward. It was thick, too thick for someone barely past 27. Deployment logs, casualty lists, commendations inked in cold type. 5 purple hearts, 3 silver stars, and a line no one could erase. 73 names lost under her watch. 279 saved. We've had conflicting reports, Rourke said. Some say you're reckless. Others call you a miracle worker. Which one are you? Aria swallowed. The air felt heavy, like Red Mesa dust choking her lungs. Neither. Ma'am, I'm just a medic who kept moving. Pierce leaned forward. Red Mesa, Ironveil, Kandahar, Fort Granite, every time. You walked out with survivors others had written off. That's not just moving. That's leadership. Her jaw tightened. With respect. Sir, I'm no leader. Leaders give orders that send people into fire. I patch them up when they crawl back or when they don't. Silence stretched. Rourke's eyes didn't blink. You've been offered officer track twice. You turned it down. Why, Aria's gaze dropped to her hands. The scars across her knuckles caught the light. She heard them again, the voices she couldn't silence. Men gasping last words. Names carved into her memory. Survivors called her ghost hands. But the dead whispered louder. I don't deserve to command, she said quietly. Not when I couldn't bring them all home, for the first time. Rourke's expression softened. No one brings them all home. The measure isn't perfection. It's what you do with the weight you carry. Pierce closed the folder. We're recommending you for warrant officer, instructor track. You'll teach the next generation how to fight for life under fire. Aria's chest tightened. Teaching meant standing still. It meant admitting the war had carved enough out of her. Yet behind the fear was something else purpose, sharp and undeniable. She looked up. If I do this, it's not about medals. It's about making sure fewer hands shake like mine. Rourke nodded once. Then it settled. Starting tomorrow, you report to the instructor cadre. Fort Granite is no longer just your duty station. It's your classroom. Aria saluted. Her hand trembled, but the gesture held. As she stepped into the hallway, the floodlights hummed overhead. She breathed deep, as if the base itself had shifted. She wasn't just a medic anymore. She was becoming something harder to ignore, something the army couldn't bury in silence. The classroom at Fort Granite smelled of gun oil and chalk dust. 30 recruits sat stiff in their chairs, eyes tracking the woman who looked more like one of them than an instructor. Aria Navarro dropped her med kit onto the desk. The sound was heavy. Final. Combat will test you in ways manuals never mention, she said. Her voice carried the quiet weight of someone who had lived every syllable. Bullets don't care how straight your uniform is, but your choices, your hands, decide who goes home. She pulled a tourniquet free, wrapping it around her own arm with practiced speed. Time matters. Hesitation kills. You don't get to panic. You act, even when your chest is shaking, even when your ears are ringing with screams. The recruits leaned forward. They'd read about medics in books. They hadn't expected one to bleed memory with every word. On the wall hung photos of training exercises, anonymous faces, perfect formations. Aria added a new photo that morning. 3 soldiers, still alive, leaning on crutches after Red Mesa. Their eyes told the story better than medals ever could. After class. One recruit lingered, barely 19, freckles across his cheeks. Ma'am, is it true they call you ghost hands? Aria met his gaze. For a moment, the old ache returned the whispers of those she couldn't save. But then she saw what the boy really wanted, proof that survival wasn't luck. It's true, she said softly. But don't chase nicknames. Chase skill. Chase the calm in chaos burns. Weeks passed. Her lessons spread across the base. Then beyond. Units left Fort Granite with tighter hands, steadier breaths. Survival rates climbed. Quietly, almost invisibly, Aria's influence shaped the battlefield without firing a single round. One evening, Colonel Naomi Rourke found her sitting alone outside the barracks, watching the sunset stain the sky red. "You've changed this place," Rourke said. Aria shook her head. "I didn't change it. I just reminded them that scars are proof of life, not failure." Rourke studied her, then offered a rare smile. "That's why we need you." Aria looked at her hands, scarred. Steady, still haunted but no longer hollow. The war had taken much, but it had left her something worth carrying, the power to turn pain into preparation, loss into legacy, and for the first time in years, she let herself believe that was enough. War had marked her, but she chose what the marks would mean, not endings, but beginnings for those who followed.